Well, folks, here I am. We're going to be playing the Ben Mankiewicz drinking game. I'll explain what that is later. Warning ahead of time, don't play if you value your liver. Continuing on in my series on the Young Turks and how completely full of shit they are, I came across a video made approximately 9 months ago when the Hope Solo case was just coming to light. Someone requested I make a video regarding Hope Solo hypocrisy, and this video was made, so I thought I'd kill two birds with one stone. And since seeing the first section of this particular video, I have been spiraling down a very, very cynical drain, and the fluid that surrounds myself circling inside the U-bend is my faith in humanity, and it is quickly receding into the dark and murky distance. To my knowledge, Ben Mankiewicz's opinion hasn't changed since this video, and by the way, your last name sounds like a standalone insult from the 1950s. But I'm warning all of you at this point, we are going to go very, very deep. This man, Ben, deserves a proper scolding. Also, I will be taking a drink every time he tries to excuse female violence or completely diverts from the original issue. I cut out the introduction, the CNN clip, and part of Anna's setup because I'm honing in on you, Ben. This should be interesting.
Where, we've kind of come together and decided, okay, what Ray Rice did was wrong. He needs to be suspended indefinitely from the NFL. There needs to be these harsh consequences for these male athletes. But honestly, I hadn't even heard or seen the Hope Solo story until today. And for those of you who don't know why she's facing charges of assault, apparently she assaulted her half-sister and also her 17-year-old nephew. When authorities were called on the scene, they said that she seemed to be intoxicated and that the victims had visible injuries, okay? So it doesn't seem like it was a little thing. It seems like it's a pretty big deal, but even though she's facing criminal charges for what happened, let's keep it real, we do have the justice system going after her. It turns out the U.S. soccer team that she plays for is not really that concerned about any type of consequences for her. So they did release a statement. Let me read that to you. They said the following. We are aware that Hope is handling a personal situation at the moment. At the same time, she has an opportunity to set a significant record that speaks to her hard work and dedication over the years with the national team. While considering all factors involved, we believe that we should recognize that in the proper way. So they basically said right there that, hey, you know what, she's one of our key players. We can't mess with that.
The reason why I'm afraid of this story.
You're afraid of this story because it cuts against your narrative, Ben. A story, mind you, that involves domestic violence against a 17-year-old that left visible injuries. The reason you are afraid is because it runs completely opposite to your preconceived worldview. Men are the bad people who beat women. Women are the innocent people who get beaten. This is the framework of Ben's mind. It has been invaded. The master controls have been tinkered with to the point where his empathy flies out the window whenever a woman is the perpetrator.
Is because Hope Solo's husband is a former pro football player named Jeremy Stevens, who we've done stories about. And Jeremy Stevens has a, we could do 7 minutes on Jeremy Stevens.
I don't understand what that has to do with the Hope Solo case. This case is about Hope Solo beating people. Her half-sister and nephew, to be exact. Yet you immediately cut to mentioning a man. We are only a couple sentences in, and already I have to take a drink. You don't even caveat it with, listen, I know what Hope Solo did was awful, but you immediately start with a deflection. Usually people like you are a little bit more subtle with your subject changes, but not you, Ben. You are a go-getter. You know what you want. So why don't you continue trying to catch that carrot tied to a stick?
From the time he was in high school, through his collegiate career, and through his NFL career, Jeremy Stevens has been accused of some fairly horrific acts of violence.
Don't you remember that this was about allegations of Hope Solo beating her half-sister and 17-year-old nephew, which left visible injuries? The evidence and testimony are there for you. Considering this is 9 months old, I'm not going to slight you for not knowing information that hadn't surfaced yet, but you were aware that police said that she struck her nephew and half-sister, leaving visible injuries, right? Please discuss the Hope Solo case and not her husband.
And I would only say about Hope Solo that, and I don't know, maybe they have a great marriage.
Maybe they do, but you don't believe they do you?
She also might be in an incredibly violent relationship.
Also a possibility. Where are you going with this, Ben? Because if you are about to do what it sounds like, then you will probably try to excuse domestic violence allegedly perpetrated on a half-sister and 17-year-old based on being married to Jeremy Stevens. I'm sure you wouldn't do that. That would be profoundly stupid.
And I don't know what happened, and I guess we should take all acts of domestic violence, whether they're perpetrated by a woman. It just seems like we're white evangelicals saying that we're discriminated against in this country.
Douchebag. Absolute douchebag. You are taking people being domestically abused, staring into their faces and saying, well, I mean, I guess we should treat your black eye equally, whether it was given to you by a man or a woman. You disgust me, Ben. You make me want to Glasgow kiss my desk to the point where a skull fracture would be the least of my worries.
Like, the issue is men beating up women.
That's another one. Wrong, sir. The issue in this particular case is a woman beating up a woman and a man. Well, technically a child under the law. He was 17 at the time. That is not the issue, and you seem to need to say, yeah, I know we're talking about this case, but what about all the men beating up women? Need I remind you that a woman was beaten up in this scenario, Ben? But we should ignore a female victim because the issue is men beating up women. Right?
Are there women who beat up men?
Yes, there are. There are women who beat up men. There are women who hit men. There are women who slap men. There are women who kick men in the testicles with reckless abandon. There are some shitty women out there, just like there are some shitty men out there who do the same thing. But please continue. I'm absolutely infatuated by how much concentrated slime can drool from your mouth.
Yeah, it happens.
I know, but there are also situations where women beat up women, which is what happened in this case.
Yeah,
right?
well, her nephew and her sister.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, look, that's assault, and it should be taken seriously.
Oh, well, forget I said slime. It should be taken seriously. Okay, well, the first step in taking something seriously is actually addressing the situation at hand. Yet the first thing you did, if you recall correctly, Ben, instead of address the allegations of domestic violence, you came out of the gate talking about how horrible her husband was. I hope you can redeem yourself by finally addressing what your video was meant to address.
But we also should not divert our attention from what is the real issue that has been brushed under the rug by sports leagues and by society in general, that we don't take it terribly seriously, that we allow it's just a husband and wife fighting.
That's another one. Oh, God. You know what? I'm going to need 2 for this. Ben, this is probably one of the clearest examples of Orwellian thought I've ever seen in my life. It's almost a bittersweet experience, to be honest. I've never seen the mind of someone in the blue overalls up close before. And in real life, no less. It is Orwell's vision personified. A woman was beaten, and a 17-year-old man was beaten. You are sitting there on your little news network, and you are paying lip service to taking domestic violence perpetrated by women seriously. Then you tell your audience not to divert from the real issue, as opposed to the fake one, I guess, and effectively tell them to sweep it under the rug. And then, in your very next abominable breath, you tell us that men beating up women is swept under the rug by society and sports leagues. After you've been presented with a case where a sports league and society swept a case of domestic violence under the rug, you tell us not to divert from the issue of men beating up women being swept under the rug! Need I remind you, for a fucking second, that Ray Rice was suspended indefinitely because of the outrage that a woman was hit. He won the appeal, but to save face from society's outrage, they had to suspend him indefinitely. Hope Solo is still proudly playing with people like you saying that even addressing it is a fucking diversion. Tell me again, which case of domestic violence got swept under the rug, Ben?
That we don't provide resources for women who are in very real danger or not real danger, but they think they're in real danger. And either way, they deserve protection until they can figure out that they're not in real danger.
Don't provide resources? Don't provide resources. Are you not unaware of the disparity between female-specific and male-specific shelters? The majority of shelters in pretty much all Western countries are specifically for women if compared to male-only shelters. To claim that we do not give these women resources is a blatant disregard for the reality of the situation. 2 + 2 = 5, as long as 5 is a victim of male indiscretion. Am I far off?
And so focusing on Hope Solo seems a bit of a misdirection for me.
That's 5. Ugh. Of course it does, Ben. Go ahead, sweep that under the rug. After all, we sweep domestic violence under the rug all the time. Do you not realize that you're making the argument that sweeping domestic violence under the rug is necessary to prevent domestic violence being swept under the rug? Do you realize how swan shit insane you sound right now?
If she has committed the crime that she's accused of, then perhaps the national team should let her go. I got that, but it doesn't seem to me to be anywhere near the same level that we've seen in the NFL.
No, Ben. No, the level does not matter. What matters are individual cases. Every single NFL football player could be a domestic abuser, and that still would not reduce the severity of Hope Solo's case. The only difference you seem to hinge on is the gender. If a man beat another man and a 17-year-old girl, it would be a real issue to you, wouldn't it?
And the guy, Jeremy Stevens was accused of hitting a kid in high school over the head with a baseball bat. He was accused of sexual assault, of rape at Washington, and he was accused of crimes since he's been in the NFL. Jeremy Stevens seems like a criminal. Mm-hmm. And this is she's been with him since I think they were together at University of Washington. I'm not 100% sure. So,
okay, all right, here's 6. Jeremy Stevens' past actions are completely irrelevant, and this is a piss-poor attempt to try and make it a man bad, woman good scenario, because a woman is the one who did all of the bad in this scenario, and it fucks with the makeup of your brain. We can hear you straining to say that this should be taken seriously, straining to say that there are women out there who beat men. It is obvious the way your brain has been formatted, yet you still short-circuit. I think that your software needs an update.
I don't know. He seems like a super violent guy, and I don't know, and it may turn out when this is all said and done that she is under his spell as well.
That is 7. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We have somebody justifying a woman violently abusing her half-sister and 17-year-old nephew with magic. We've gone off the deep end, folks. It's all over. There's no help. The candle at the end of the tunnel has been extinguished. Mayday, mayday. The deep end is approaching and falling off is inevitable. People are screaming. There's rioting in the streets. Blood everywhere. Society has collapsed. There are wizards out there now casting spells on women and making them violent. Agency can be removed with a swish and flick. We aren't prepared for this threat.
I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass.
At least you're honest.
But I know that I don't like Jeremy Stevens. Yeah. He seems like a super dangerous guy. And everywhere he went, for whether it was in high school because he was super talented, they were like, just maybe don't hit another kid over the head with a baseball bat. And the rape allegation, it went away.
Yeah.
Even though I read a long story about it in the Seattle Times or maybe the Post-Intelligencer, and it seemed to me, oh, he raped that girl. So she is in a difficult situation. That's my hesitancy.
Exactly what you describe happening in the Jeremy Stevens cases was currently happening in the Hope Solo case. But she's in a difficult situation while he totally raped that girl. You don't respect women. You treat them like victims in every conceivable circumstance. And men like violent maniacs in every conceivable circumstance. You are a bigot. You are irreparable. Your worldview is the kind that fosters the subjugation of populations. Protect the women at all costs, even at the sacrifice of my rational faculties. And even if I am outright saying that if you yourself were beaten, Ben, and injured mercilessly by a significant other, that you would tell everyone not to focus on your broken face because men are out there beating women. You are a regular Robert Fisk. For anyone who doesn't get this reference, Robert Fisk once went to Afghanistan and was beaten up for being a Westerner, and Fisk commented on the matter and said that he didn't blame them for beating him up for being a Westerner. You are having guilt by association, bigotry, and the bedrock for oppression thrust upon you, and you are endorsing it and thanking people for it. Your mind is a dungeon, Ben. You are chained up in a damp, cold, stone room with only enough light coming in to see the chains at your feet, and yet you still look down at them and smile.
So here's what my issue is. Through reporting on these stories over the last month, I really realized that there's a huge population of people in the country that feel like this is like a war against dudes, right? That guys who have been abused in the past aren't properly being represented, right? Or that women are able to do the exact same thing that a man does in terms of physical violence, but she doesn't get punished as harshly as a man does. And that exists. That double standard exists. I mean, I'm noticing that that double standard doesn't necessarily exist in our justice system, because she is facing charges. So she is being investigated. She had to enter a plea, and she pleaded not guilty to the assault. And look, we don't know all the facts. We weren't there in that room. We don't know what happened. We haven't seen a video, right? But at the same time, if she is accused of that type of activity, that type of violence, I don't care who she's with. I don't care who her husband is, and I don't care what kind of violence he's accused of. She is her own person. So regardless of what kind of relationship you're in, you can't go around assaulting other people. And so if we're going to sit here and have conversations about NFL players and how we should be harsh with them if they're caught in a situation of domestic violence, we should have the same treatment for women or female athletes as well. That's my biggest concern.
It does exist in our justice system. Charges have been filed, but men still in the aggregate receive harsher sentences for the same crime. However, maybe she was just talking about charges being filed. Anna, you relit the candle at the end of this tunnel. Even you can notice this blatant double standard and recognize it when it rears its ugly head. I had never thought I would be saying this, but Anna, I agree.
Yeah, you know what? I don't know that it's a double standard. It's a standard, and we say the word double standard like we've just said racism.
No, we don't. We say double standard like we say double standard. It is not a standard. A standard is something that is applied equally. A double standard is something that is applied unequally. And you can't say that we have an equal double standard for the same action, because that wouldn't make any fucking sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have a lot of double standards. Some of them are good.
Please name one good double standard, because double standards are agents of inequality.
An example that I always use is you go into the 7-Eleven and stick a gun in the clerk's face and steal the money, and then pistol whip him and leave him bleeding on the floor and steal what's there. You've committed a crime at the 7-Eleven and robbed them. At the same time, if you go into the 7-Eleven and you steal a pack of gum in the New York Times, you've also robbed them. But we treat those crimes very differently.
That's false. In the first case, you've committed an assault as well as an armed robbery. If you walk into a store and steal a pack of gum, you've committed shoplifting or petty theft. You did not commit a robbery by stealing a pack of gum. Even if they were the same thing in your example, it's still shit, and you should stop using it. A double standard includes a principle that is applied differently to people in different groups. Unless you are saying a woman giving a man a black eye is similar to stealing a pack of gum from a store, and a man giving a woman a black eye is similar to armed robbery and assault with a deadly weapon, that is a double standard, Ben! A better example of a double standard would involve two separate cases where a person stuck a gun in the clerk's face and the perpetrator was treated differently based on their gender.
Right.
Now, I grant, and here we're talking about some degree of domestic violence. But obviously, shoving someone because they're in your face and you go like this and they stumble back and they hit their head and it's bad and they cut themselves, that's a crime. You can't shove somebody, right? Decking your fiance and then stepping over her on an elevator and having her hit her head there is a different kind of crime.
There were two people who got visible injuries in the Solo case, Ben. You don't know how those injuries were inflicted, and yet you're willing to compare a light shove and a stumble to the Ray Rice situation as if that was even relevant. You're incredible. Jaw-dropping. Oh, wait, that was an excuse. Here we go.
And I don't know exactly what she did with her nephew or this, but I don't want to lose focus that we have occasionally for years overly performance-enhancing, drugged-up athletes.
Oh my goodness, I have to take another one.
Filled with rage, taught to hit and hit and hit and hit and hit from the time they were young. Coaches praising them for the violence that it's a violent game and we praise and like that violence.
You know, I played football for 6 years, believe it or not. Hitting is a big part of the game. However, so is teamwork and camaraderie. If you play as a receiver, you are not taught to hit. You are taught to run quickly and catch the ball. And if it is inevitable that someone is about to hit you and you can't avoid it, you lower your shoulders, protect the ball, and take the hit.
And then they take some of them, most of the guys in the NFL are good, decent, and dedicated athletes, and then some of them take out their violence, in Adrian Peterson's case, on a tiny little 4-year-old boy, and in Ray Rice's case, on a woman who was incredibly mad at him. Justifiably, by the way, I'm sure. And that's a big, giant issue that is separate from individual cases of domestic violence involving women that should, of course, be investigated, but they aren't the same.
Yeah. No, I think that the broader issue is the fact that when it comes to professional sports, the sport or the game itself is more important than the players involved or the players' families involved. And it's all about profit. It's all about bottom lines. And, you know, when you really think about the response that Hope Solo's team released, that's what it was all about. It was about, hey, you know what? We need her. You know,
Yeah.
she's important to us. She's important to the game. And that trumps everything else. That means that there's something wrong with the country, right? When we think that a game is more important than the safety and security of individuals that might be in an abusive relationship.
Also, who gives a shit about soccer? You were going to say that, right? Also, who gives a shit about soccer? Also, who gives a shit about soccer? Also, who gives a shit about soccer?
Amazing. Amazing, Ben. This is absolutely unbelievable. Have a good day, everyone else.